So good evening, everybody. Welcome back after a break. We start with a new topic today. Last time we had talked about dynamic memory allocation. Now, before I go ahead with this new topic, I reiterate my promise that I had made to you. Okay, and what is that reiterate the promise? It is like whatever we had learned in the last few sessions in dynamic memory allocation, it is all the legacy way of doing it. Now, when I use the word legacy way of doing it, means it's an old style of way of memory management. And we had seen there are so many places where we actually can go wrong. The simplest thing that we spent time was discussing how to overload copy constructor correctly, how to overload assignment equal to operator correctly, and so on. There is so much of discussion we had to have. We had to spend 2 hours only discussing the concept of deep copy and its implementation when you have classes and which are being assigned to each other and so on, objects which are assigned to each other and so on. That's an old story. If that was thought to be the major cause of failure of C++ application, today when you look at this problem has been taken care of. Modern C++ does not require you to write any of those functions. Rather, it is said as a good C programmer, unless you are not implementing some library, if you are an application developer, you are not developing something from ground up, some API you are implementing from scratch. If you are an application developer, it is recommended that not to use operator new, not to use operator delete. So these operators that we have talked about, overloading copy constructor, overloading equal to operator, taking care of shallow copy and deep copy, nothing of that sort has to be done. You are not supposed to use those kind of functions where there is so much of scope of we going wrong. So it is not required you to do that. Then if it is not required, then how do I go ahead with dynamic memory allocation? There is a much safer way of implementing concept of dynamic memory allocation. You do not have to take all that risk of unnecessary responsibility where there is so many places where we can actually go wrong. So keep that thing in mind. We are not required to use, or it is not recommended to use operator new and operator delete. And who is saying that? It's not me who is saying that. It's not my opinion. Strastrup, the creator of C++ himself, says not to use these operators. Now, earlier he is the one who proposed it, but now he says don't use them. So comes in concept of smart pointers. Things are quite efficient today. They are quite simple. Most of the responsibility is taken care of by the C++ ecosystem. You do not have to take this unnecessary responsibility of handling memory, dynamic memory allocation. You don't have to do that. Everything will be automated for you. So my promise to you is very soon, maybe this week or next week, we'll have a workshop wherein I'll discuss how do we resolve this particular problem of dynamic memory allocation, and what are the new techniques which the modern C++ provides us so that it can all be done in a beautiful way, and when to use what kind of features. So I plan to take up a workshop where I discuss the new type of pointers that this language has provided us. They are all categorized as something called as smart pointers. So there is unique pointer, there is shared pointer, there is weak pointer, there is attoptr. There are a lot of smart pointers which are now available to us in C++. And the next topic for us is discussion of this concept of smart pointers itself. Today we plan to start with another topic though. Today we plan to start with a topic that is inheritance. But before we start with inheritance, we need to discuss something called as relationship. So let's understand what this concept of relationship is all about. Before that, is there any query that you have regarding the topic that we had discussed earlier? Yes, anybody has a query? Anybody has any question? No? So let's begin with a new topic, that is relationship. Now, when we talk about relationship, okay, So relationship exists everywhere. Although our topic for discussion is inheritance, but before we actually go ahead with inheritance, there are other kind of relationships which are also exhibited in C++ or in any object-oriented languages. And we had talked about few of them while we had introduction to object-oriented concept, where we talked about concept of hierarchy. But today we'll dwell into more details of understanding what this concept of relationship is all about. So let's begin with this topic of relationships in C++. Even in real life, don't you have so many different relationships? And you, I did not record all this time. Thank you, Deepak.
सर रेकॉर्डिंग चालू आहे.
नाही आत्ता चालू केलं दीपकनी सांगितलं.
चल रही है रिकॉर्डिंग.
क्या बात करे. Let's continue. Anyway, so I'll just quickly repeat. There are four kind of relationships that we normally come across. There are four kind of relationships that we come across: composition, utilization, instantiation, and inheritance. The first one that we are talking about is composition. This occurs when one class is made up of another. That means you have a class and it has some attributes, and those attributes are instances of some other class. So whole is composed of some kind of parts. The whole may or may not be responsible for construction of the parts. That's okay. But I'm primarily putting them as composition. But we had discussed in detail aggregation, association. We had discussed those things in detail, and composition. There's a varying degree of ownership that is there. So here we're talking about a composition where you have one class object, and design of that class object is incomplete without you having understanding of some other objects which are a part of it. So one object contains objects of another class as their data. Car and engine is what we are talking about. So you cannot have a car without an engine. The car cannot function as a car. It cannot deliver the services of a car and so on. And then we have utilization. Now, when you talk about utilization, it exists between two or more classes that make use of one another. So there is utilization that make use of another. One may use one another, or both may use one another. That's okay. A driver and a car. But if you look at this example of a driver and a car, I can describe driver independent of car. For me to describe a driver, do I have to have any knowledge about a car? Not at all. For me to describe a car, do I have to have any knowledge about the driver? No. But driver is no driver without a car. A car is of no use without a driver, unless you are talking about this new generation Google driverless car. But otherwise, we always require a driver to drive a car. So both of them make use of another. I can say driver uses a car to get his work done, to move from one place to another. Car uses a driver for it being moved. It cannot move on its own. So there is utilization relation. But have one thing in mind. Both of them can be described, both of them can exist in the nature independent of each other. Both can be described independent of each other, but they make use of one another. In composition, you cannot describe a car without an engine. So there is a dependency. Here in utilization, there is utilization for fulfilling their objective, but both of them can be described independent of each other. And then comes instantiation. We have been talking about objects. Every object is created based on some design. So there's a relationship between the design and the instance that has been created based on that particular design. So we have a class, an instance of the same class. There is an instantiation relationship on object of a class and its own objects. That's instantiation relationship. Sholay and movie, if I say. So movie is a class and Sholay is an instance of that particular class called as movie. It will have its own attributes and so on. Own means whatever attribute movie gives you, it will have the values for that thing. So then last comes is inheritance, where one class is created from another. So vehicle and a car. So car inherits all the properties of vehicle. So it's a partially designed class. When your information about that thing is incomplete, then we have that partially described class kind of thing, vehicle. It's an abstract thing, may not be real. It may not be created for instantiation. It may have been created only for the purpose of inheritance. So we have this class called as vehicle. And from the vehicle, we have inherited and created a new class called as car. So this car class has been created based off an existing class called as vehicle. So when you design a new class based on an existing class, where you acquire, inherit some properties from an existing class called as vehicle. So we say there is inheritance relationship. And I can say, if I have a car, I can say it's a vehicle. You can very well call an instance of a class car as if it's a vehicle. You can refer to an object of a subclass as if it's an instance of superclass. So there is inheritance relationship. Every attribute that is there in vehicle will be making sense for a car. Will we make sense for a car? Because car is a kind of vehicle. Car is a kind of vehicle. So that was a basic discussion. If anybody has a query, please ask.
सर युटिलायझेशन आणि असोसिएशन वेगवेगळं आहे.
let's not get into that confusion right now. They're definitely different. Now, when we talk about ek minute, when we talked about association, okay, what is the association definition that we have taken up?
Doctor and patient.
Doctor and patient, correct? So there is some kind of relationship which is there.
They interact with each other.
They interact with each other. Both of them cannot be, they cannot fulfill their purpose unless there is a degree of ownership which is there. So when I talk about composition, uh, there is ownership that is there. So car owns that engine. And when I talk about utilization or when I talk about association, so there is no ownership that is involved. The ownership means the car doctor doesn't own the patient, patient doesn't own the doctor. Car definitely owns an engine. University owns the department. The construction destruction is controlled by the whole, maybe controlled by the whole, it's a part of it. But then when the degree is less, we say it's association. When the degree is higher, when you talk about degree, when it is higher, we say it's utilization, or we can say it's association kind of relationship which is there. We had talked about three things. We talked about association, we talked about aggregation, is what we had talked about. And when we talked about association, uh, we said each of these objects have their own life cycle and there is no owner. So if there is no owner, always think about association. Now don't get confused between the terms though. So if there is no ownership issue involved, it's association. Car and engine, there is a ownership which is involved. So it's not association, it's composition. Doctor and patient, or the another example, driver and a car, there is no ownership. Nobody owns each other, correct? So in that case, a driver can draw an parallel between the driver and car and doctor and patient. A doctor can treat n number of patient. A patient can visit n number of doctors. Likewise, a driver can drive not just my car or your car. He can drive any car, and a same car can be driven by a number of drivers. Correct. So there is no binding which is there between that object and a class. But if I say car and engine, that car has that particular engine, and there may be some kind of ownership issue which is involved. So when you talk about aggregation, it's a specialized form of association between two or more objects in which objects have their own life cycle, but there exists ownership issue as well. So whenever there is ownership, it is aggregation or composition, and when there is no ownership, it's always association. So in our case, the four categories that I have listed over there, when I'm saying utilization, it's only association. But when I say composition, it can be aggregation or it can be composition, a specialized form of it. So either of them. So when I use the word henceforth composition, you can think about it either aggregation or specialized form of aggregation, that is composition. So let's use this term composition for two things, aggregation and composition. For both, I'm going to use the term as composition. Let's not differentiate between aggregation and composition. Okay. Uh, in composition, there is ownership, but the whole is responsible for construction and destruction of the part. In aggregation, there is ownership, but there may not be physical containment which is there. Means what? Remember that example that I had given, course and क्या example था हमारा? Degree program and a course. We have B degree and this is a C programming course. There is a BCS degree. There is also C programming course. That kind of example that we had taken. So aggregation and composition, let's come them together. So in this particular topic now, whenever I say composition, it can either be aggregation or it can be composition. When I say utilization, it is only association. When I say inheritance, it is inheritance. When I say inheritance, it is inheritance. When I say instantiation, it's instantiation. So is the doubt clear? Any question, anybody, regarding whatever we have just now said?
Sir, means composition is dealing with interdependency, and utilization is almost independent of each other.
No, it's not independent. Na? Doctor cannot be called as a doctor if there are no patient. Patient means doctor treats patient. He gets his work done. He fulfills his objective by treating a patient. But he may treat one patient or he may treat a number of patients. Likewise, a patient visits doctor for being treated. So both are utilizing each other. There is no ownership which is involved. I cannot say doctor is a part of patient, patient is owned by doctor. There is no ownership which is involved. There is association, there is utilization. Both of them are associated with each other, both of them are utilizing each other. Today's example is driver and a car. So driver and car, both of them are utilizing each other. There is an association between them, but is there ownership involved? So when we talk about composition or when you talk about aggregation, aggregation is the right word, I should have used aggregation here. When I talk about aggregation, and specialized form of aggregation is composition, there is ownership involved. It's not just they are not utilizing each other. They may be car uses engine, so there is a utilization which is there, but there is an additional aspect about ownership as well. There is a whole and a part kind of relationship. One thing is a part of another. Okay, and departments are a part of university. Professor is a part of department. uh, Department has professor. Okay, we don't never say patient has doctor, doctor has patient. We don't say that. Doctor treats patient. There is, it's not like they are a part of each other. In aggregation and in composition, you cannot describe one without other. Can you ever go on to describe a car without engine? Can you describe a university without departments? Can you describe departments without professor? Is that possible? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No.
No. But can you describe doctor without patient?
Yes.
Can we describe car without driver?
Yes.
So get that differentiation clearly in mind. One is association. So what we called association earlier is now utilization for us, where both of them are independent of each other. And when we talk about composition or when we say aggregation, so henceforth when it's aggregation or a specialized form of aggregation, I'll still use the word composition in this particular topic now. Anybody else has a doubt? That was a quick recap about what we had seen earlier. Anybody has a question? Or click on yes or no. Let me understand whether you could recollect whatever discussion that we had earlier. Nikhilesh and Abhishek. Nikhilesh, doubt है काय?
No, sir.
Okay, here we go. Thank you, Aman. So let's continue with our discussion now. Okay, so we have been talking about uh, henceforth in our course in this particular topic. If I say composition, don't just listen here. Think about it as either aggregation or composition. So I'm not going to differentiate between aggregation and composition. And you know the difference. Huh? Can somebody quickly tell me now after this discussion, what's the difference between association and composition, aggregation and composition?
When composition, when the whole destroy, everything inside will be destroyed. But in aggregation, that will not happen.
That may not happen. It's like the whole, whether the whole is responsible for construction of the part or the whole is not responsible for construction of the part, whether the parts are present inside the whole or whether they're present outside the whole. So based on those criteria, we can differentiate between them. Okay, so let's proceed further. Now what you are supposed to do is there's an exercise that we'll go ahead with. And exercise is always good. Now whatever form of exercise that we're involved in, it's always good. So let's begin with an exercise. And in this exercise, what we are supposed to do is we are required to uh, identify various relationships which are there. What you are going to do is you're going to identify the relationship and you're going to tell me uh, what category does it belong to, whether it's class relationship or class object relationship, and within that whether it is inheritance, composition, inheritance, composition, instantiation, or utilization. So that is what you're going to identify and you're going to justify the answer, whatever answer you give. So let's begin with this particular discussion wherein we will identify some kind of relationships. Here we go. The first relationship is ball pen and refill. Quickly identify whether it's class relationship or class object relationship. Come on, it has to be an interactive session. You are supposed to answer.
Class.
It's class relationship. Okay, anybody else? All of you agree? If anybody doesn't agree, if nobody answers, I assume that everybody agrees to what Nikhilesh has said. Anybody has another opinion? I feel Nikhilesh is wrong.
Sir, class object.
It's class object relationship. So we have two different answers. One is, and then these are two major categories. Okay, Nikhilesh, since you have answered, if it's class, what type of class relationship it is?
Aggregation.
Aggregation. And रोहन, आपने आंसर किया आपके हिसाब से?
Sir, composition is class object, right? So it is a class object relationship.
Okay, so one basic idea that you have to have very clear in mind: composition cannot ever be class relationship. Inheritance cannot ever be class object relationship. Utilization and inheritance are always class relationship. Listen to me. Utilization and inheritance are always class relationship. Instantiation and composition are class object relationship. अब मुझे बताइए ये क्या है, क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट है या क्लास क्लास है?
So class object.
ये क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट है, तो क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट है तो टाइप कौन सा?
Sir, composition.
कॉम्पोजिशन. एक्सप्लेन व्हाई.
So ball pen is made up of refill. It has refill inside it, so it is made up with the help of refill. Refill is a part of ball pen.
देयर इज अ पार्ट ऑफ रिलेशनशिप. याद रखिए जब भी ये पार्ट ऑफ का कॉन्सेप्ट आएगा, पार्ट, whether it is stored inside it or whether it stores outside it, different, doesn't really matter. When we talk about professor and department, professor did not live inside the department, he can be present outside, but there's a professor is a part of the department is inside the university, there's a part of relationship. तो जब भी पार्ट ऑफ रिलेशनशिप आएगा, लेट इट बी एसोसिएशन, लेट इट बी एग्रीगेशन, लेट इट बी कॉम्पोजिशन, हियर विल आइडेंटिफाई इट एज composition relationship. So the most important term over here was part. Can you ever go on to describe ball pen without talking about refill? No, that's not possible. So if I'm describing a ball pen, my description of ball pen will be incomplete without talking about a refill. So I cannot go on to even describe this particular refill without I talking about ball pen. So instance of class refill is an attribute of class ball pen. So when I'm describing a ball pen, the class ball pen will have an attribute called as refill. But refill, a refill, refill, a refill. So refill is an object of a class called as refill. A refill is an object of a class called as refill. It's composition relationship that we have. A description of ball pen is incomplete without description of refill. Ball pen has a relationship. Refill is a part of ball pen. Yes, Nikhilesh, what's the question?
सर चुकीने झाले ते.
Okay. So it's class object relationship. So always keep in mind, composition is always class object relationship. So it's composition kind of relationship that is there. Understand, identify the relationship. If you do not identify the relationship, see this topic you may find, it's all theory thing that I'm discussing. You cannot design a solution unless you do not know how you're going to represent this particular scenario. So you are going to have the real life scenarios in front of you. You have to represent it programmatically. So and let it be any language, let it be Java or let it be C++, let it be any other new object-oriented language that you're working on. You have to identify. Unless you don't identify what design you're going to make, either you're going to create two different classes, keep one. So it's more of an aspect of designing. So today's topic is not just related to C++. Today's topic is more to do with object-oriented programming. You have to understand the relationship. Unless you don't understand the relationship, you cannot come up with a solution. You cannot design a solution. Now, next one, ball pen and notebook. Come on, everybody has to answer.
Associated.
No, first I want whether it's class or class object.
So class.
So one answer is class. Others? Yes, come on, everybody has to answer. Let me not call out your name. These are opportunities I have been telling you. When if I ask you a question, it's an opportunity for you to check whether you have understood or not. And believe me, the best thing that can happen is your answer is right, and the worst thing that can happen is your answer is wrong. So what? Either way, it's good because you will remember. You gave a right answer, you will remember that. You give a wrong answer, you still remember that. You will never forget if you are involved in that interaction. Come on. If I scold you, you will also remember throughout your life. उस दिन सर ने मुझे गाली दी थी, याद रहेगा. You'll never forget that topic. Come on, others.
The class.
It's class. Okay. So two answers for class. Anybody feels it's a class object relationship? ओके, अगर एक क्लास क्लास रिलेशनशिप है तो विच टाइप?
So utilization.
यूटिलाइजेशन, क्या बात कर रहे हो? एनी अदर आंसर?
So utilization.
I don't think that's right. Any other answer?
Sir, they both exist independently, sir. So it has to be utilization.
They both exist independent of each other. Both can be described independent of each other. So there is a strong reason behind it. Why is utilization? Both because to describe a ball pen, I don't need a notebook, and to describe a notebook, I don't need a ball pen. I can describe independent. They can exist in the nature independent of each other. But then it doesn't make sense for us to only have a ball pen. It doesn't make sense for us to only have a notebook, because notebook, for it to be written upon, requires some writing instrument, and ball pen is one of the writing instrument. And for ball pen, how में तो लिखोगे नहीं, you need to have some writing surface, and the surface will be provided to you by the notebook. So that's very correct. A ball pen is used by notebook to write upon. Plus, ball pen utilizes notebook as a writing surface for writing, and it's a class relationship, and it is utilization that is there. That was a perfect kind of answer. How about this? Come on.
Sir, again class and utilization.
Again, class utilization. Okay. Anybody else? How can it always be utilization? Come on, others. Smita, what do you feel? स्मिता, करण, अभिषेक, मनोज, संकल्प, यश, कुछ तो आंसर करो. यदु?
Sir, class utilization.
क्लास यूटिलाइजेशन जस्टिफाई करो, क्यों?
Sir, T independently describable, cup पण independently describable, पण if we have to drink a tea, we need a cup. Inside that we need a tea. So together the work is done.
ओके. एनी अदर जस्टिफिकेशन एनीबॉडी? रोहन, आपका क्या आंसर था?
The same.
जस्टिफिकेशन कुछ अलग है?
So same. Both can exist independently,
हाँ.
and they both are utilizing.
They both are utilizing each other.
Yes.
So when you talk, tea is served in cup. It could be served in some other container, but you could also serve it in cup. So for tea to be served, you require some utensil, something to serve. Cup can act as something that can be used to serve the tea. Tea uses cup for holding itself. You cannot just have tea without that container. So tea uses cup for holding itself. So cup contains or holds tea. Cup contains or holds tea. And both of them can be described each other without each other. For me to describe tea, I don't require to have any knowledge about cup, and for me to describe cup, I don't have to have any knowledge about the tea. Both can exist independent of each other, but both of them are utilizing each other. So whenever it's utilization, it's always class relationship. It's class relationship. How about this?
Sir, inheritance and class.
ध्यान से देखो.
Yes, sir.
Anywhere else? इनहेरिटेंस है या इंस्टेंशिएशन है?
Sir, it is inheritance.
क्लास है या क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट है?
The class
Class है.
object.
Class object.
So
तो
class है ना.
तो कौन से क्लास है और कौन से क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट है? वी हैव बोथ आंसर्स. तो अगर कोई क्लास कहता है तो बोथ ऑफ देम आर क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट है, तो कौन क्लास है कौन ऑब्जेक्ट है?
Class mammal आहे.
हाँ.
Object tiger.
So tiger is an object of class mammal. Like Nikhilesh is an object of type student. And so Nikhilesh is a single object. There will not be two instances. Every object has to be unique. तो दुनिया में एक ही टाइगर है क्या? Tiger itself is a design. Tiger is a description of that animal which has those claws, which has the canines, which has the striped body, and so on. So tiger itself is a class. It is inheriting all the properties of mammal. So tiger is a class. This tiger and that tiger is an object of the class. So tiger is not a class. not an object. It's a class. Tiger is description of all those animals which have that long tail, huge body, canines, claws, sharp eyes. So those are tigers. That description of a tiger. So tiger only is a description of that category of animal, but it is inheriting properties from mammal. So it is class relationship. There is some kind of sharing. Tiger shares all the properties and the behavior of class mammal. So there is some kind of sharing. So whenever there is sharing or whenever there is connection, it's always class relationship. So this is class relationship and inheritance. Tiger is a kind of mammal. Tiger is a kind of tiger exhibits all the properties of mammal. So every attribute of a mammal is exhibited by tiger. Tiger does not lay eggs. Tiger is not cold-blooded. Tiger is warm-blooded because every mammal has to be warm-blooded. Mammals give rise to young ones. Tiger also gives rise to young ones. So all the properties of mammals are exhibited by tiger. Tiger class is created or derived. It inherits all the properties of mammals. So it's class relationship and inheritance. Come on, somebody other than Rohan and Nikhilesh, कोई और आंसर करे. Nikhilesh, Rohan and Rajat छोड़ के बाकी लोग आंसर करें अभी. Everybody should have a chance. Come on. कहाँ गए? सो गए सब लोग? यदु, अरे गायब हो रहे. फोर्स
सर क्लास
कौन आंसर कर रहे हैं? यदु. हाँ, क्लास रिलेशनशिप. ओके, तो व्हाट टाइप?
सर एग्रीगेशन.
क्लास एग्री, विल नॉट यूज द टर्म एग्रीगेशन. मैंने कहा यहाँ अगर वो एग्रीगेशन है कॉम्पोजिशन तो हम कॉम्पोजिशन ही कहेंगे, बिकॉज कॉम्पोजिशन स्पेशलाइज काइंड ऑफ एग्रीगेशन. तो वील यूज द टर्म कॉम्पोजिशन हियर टिल द टाइम आई डू नॉट अपडेट माय स्लाइड. ओके, तो बताइए.
सर
कॉम्पोजिशन एग्रीगेशन रहेगा तो भी हमें कॉम्पोजिशन ही कहना है आपको. दैट्स व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से.
यस सर.
तो ये कौन सा है?
सर
कॉम्पोजिशन है. और टाइप?
सर टाइप.
कैटेगरी कौन सा है? कैटेगरी और टाइप. कैटेगरी क्लास है या क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट है?
क्लास.
कैसे एक्सप्लेन करो.
सर हाउस को भी अलग बोल सकते हैं और डोर भी अलग हो सकता है ना सर.
करेक्ट.
तो सर वो
अलग हो सकता है का मतलब क्या है?
सर इंडिपेंडेंटली उसको अपन
इंडिपेंडेंट. सो यू कैन डिस्क्राइब अ हाउस विदाउट डोर.
No, we can describe a door without a house.
Can you describe a house without door?
No.
Finished. So they cannot be described without each other. So house, if you unless you are not staying in Shani Shingnapur, every house has to have a door. That's a common idea, except for some exceptions which are there. There are always exceptions to everything in life. So Shani Shingnapur is an exception, but other Shani Shingnapur ko chhod de, so every house has to have a door. So when you house has a door is a part of house, correct? So door is a part of house. So when you talk about house and door, this has a part of, and you have an instance of door that is used while describing a house. So while we talk about a house, I may have four doors. The main door is may have a different strength and structure. The inner doors may have a different strength and structure. Material may be different. Outer door may be very strong door. Inner door may be a light weight door. The bathroom door may be a different kind of door. So you have an object of door which is utilized, which is a part of design of my house. So my design of house will be incomplete without me talking about this particular door. So it's a class and an object. So class is house and object of it is an instance of some other class. So door obviously is a class, very true. But instance of that class is used to describe house. So while I'm describing that house, object of class door are used to describe that particular house. So it is a class object relationship. Description of house is incomplete without description of door. So I cannot have a house without a door. House has a door, or doors are a part of the house. So it's class object relationship. Whenever it's composition, it cannot ever be class. It is always class object relationship, and it is composition. How about this?
Sir, door class object
कसं सांगा ना. आता कार आणि इंजिन मध्ये दोन्ही क्लास होते की नाही?
Yes.
Engine, instance of engine, that means object of engine was utilized inside car to describe a car.
Yes.
So likewise, to describe a house, I'll have to have an object of class door, main door. object of type door. So I'll say house has a main door, house has a back door, suppose. Okay, so I'll say house has two attributes, a main door and a back door. So main door is an object of type door.
Yes.
House has windows, house has door. So that object of class door will be a part of house.
Yes.
So like object of class engine was a part of car. So likewise object of class door will be a part of house. Is that
तर
okay?
म्हणजे ऑब्जेक्ट आणि क्लास it's something like a class is a completely different thing, but object is a uh, object of another class, and they have a relationship.
There is an attribute of a class house. House has suppose area. House has address. Okay, these are attributes. Likewise, house has one more attribute called as door. So an attribute of a class is an object of some other class. So door is an attribute, a field of a class called as house. And that field is not of basic type like int or char or float. It's of type class, some other class.
Means data type is an object.
Data type is a class. Because if I say int roll number, likewise I'll say class door, main door, door, back door kind of thing. So I'll define two objects of that particular type. References na? Means I'll, oh, in C++ we'll say object. If I say door so and so. So I'll say door, main door. So main door is an object of type door. Door, back door. So back door is an object of type door. And both of them are attributes of my class house. Is that okay?
Sir,
No.
data member is a class. Then class मध्ये काय असेल?
Data member is a class name. There is a class. If I describe this particular class in this fashion, here I go. If I say class house, I am describing this class house. Before that, I have already have created a class called as door, and it has all the properties of door. Properties of door will be what? The weight of the door, the dimensions of the door, everything will be there. And when I'm describing house, house will have suppose string address, float area, carpet area, suppose float carpet area, and it will also have door, main door, door, rear door. So what am I doing now? I have an attribute called as address, which is of type string. That's also composition actually. We have an attribute called as carpet area. That's of type float. I have an attribute called as main door. That's of type door. So when this object of class house is created, so if I create an object of class house, my house. So if I construct an object of this class called as my house, and if I have to represent it logically, how will it be represented? So if I want to represent it logically, it could be something like this. I have an object of class house called as my house. Inside this my house, I have an attribute called as string address, float area, carpet area. And after that, I'll have two objects. One is an object of type door, that is main door, and another is an object of type door, that is a rear door. Is that okay?
Means in short, if a class contains a user defined data type, then it's a class object relation.
Always.
Okay.
It has an attribute. What am I saying? It has an attribute, and that attribute is a object of some other class. So this is an attribute. Rear door is an attribute, and that attribute is an object of some other class. So it's always composition. Rather, in the definition itself, I had said that. I'll just show you that the definition, what we had said. Is the screen visible? Presentation? Is the presentation visible?
Yes, sir.
So हमने यहाँ क्या कहा था composition में? Object of a class contains object of another class as their data. That statement. Object of a class, that means object of class house, contains object of another class as their data. So in this case, our object that we have, and that object that we have is my house, contains an object of type door, and that door is an object of some other class. So whenever that happens, it's always composition. Is that clear, Nikhilesh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How about this now? Come on, quick.
So class and utilization.
Class and utilization. Okay. Anybody else? Justify करो. Answer सही भी हो सकता है, गलत भी हो सकता है. Justify.
So both can exist without each other.
Both can exist without each other. And
Class and object.
so one says class object, other is saying class. So रोहन आपने class और type कौन सा कहा?
Utilization, sir.
Okay. बताइए, explain कीजिए utilization कैसे?
Sir, in this case they are not utilizing each other, but
तो utilizing नहीं कर रहे तो utilization कहाँ से होगा फिर?
sir, but they are existing.
तो 50% कैसे चलेगा?
Okay.
Utilizing नहीं कर रहे तो utilization कहाँ से होगा? Utilization is only when they are utilizing each other. Yes, निखिलेश आप कुछ कह रहे थे?
Sir, there is a class called ink pen. There is another class
First
called
tell me category. Class है class object.
class object.
Class object. Okay, tell me now. Which
There
is a class and which is object?
Ink pen and ball pen is a class, and pen is an another.
No, we are not talking about relationship between three things. Only between these two things, ink pen and ball pen. So these are only two things which are there in front of us. We will not introduce any more. Say, your relationship with me is different. Your relationship with somebody else is different. So we are not talking about third. So between you and me, what's the relationship? Likewise, between pen and ball pen, ink pen and ball pen, what's the relationship? I have one relationship with you. You have some other relationship with somebody else. Yes. Come on, somebody else. ये दो ही लोग अटेंड कर रहे हैं क्या सेशन?
सर
क्लास एंड टाइप
तो यूटिलाइजेशन
एक्सप्लेन करो ना कैसे. आंसर सही हो सकता है बट जस्टिफिकेशन भी तो चाहिए. रोहन कह रहा है इसमें यूटिलाइजेशन है ही नहीं, तो यूटिलाइजेशन
both entities can exist independently.
लाउडर.
Both entities can exist independently.
And both make use of each other.
No, sir.
No. तो यूटिलाइजेशन नहीं है अगर यूज नहीं कर रहे तो. Look at this. If you are very sure it's class and it's not class object because none of them are object. अगर वो class है तो दो ही तो ऑप्शन बचते हैं आपके पास. Either is inheritance or it is utilization. So there is only other option left is inheritance. Why am I saying inheritance? There is some kind of sharing. When there is some kind of connection, utilization. When there is some kind of sharing, it's inheritance. Sharing can be structure, sharing can be behavior. Ink pen and ball pen, both of them have ink inside it. There is structural things also, it is sharing. Both of them have the same purpose, that is of writing. Behavior also they're sharing. So both of them inherit from the same superclass, that is pen. So we have pen. Pen describes that we can write. Pen talks about quantity of ink, how much we can write and all those things. So there's a description of pen. And from that particular pen, both of them are inheriting some kind of properties. So when you talk about this ball pen and ink pen, both of them share certain things. What do they share? They share some structure and they share some kind of behavior that may have been inherited from some other class, but there is some kind of sharing. There is something common between them. So whenever there is sharing, it's always inheritance. So both of them inherit from some other class, from the same superclass. So ball pen and pen, both of them inherit from a class called as pen. So they're inheriting. None of them is a object. Neither ink pen is an object. That's a type, category. Ball pen, your ink pen, my ink pen, that can be an object. Okay, but ink pen, it's just a type. Ink pen is just a type. If I say this ball pen, that's an object. But if I say ball pen, that's just a type. That's just a type. If I say this ink pen, then that's a object. Your ink pen, my ink pen, that's an object. Ink pen is just a class. Both exhibits the behavior that of writing instrument. So there is some kind of sharing. There is ink structure also. They share certain things. behavior also they share something. There's a class relationship and it is inheritance because there is some sort of sharing. So whenever there is sharing, inheritance. Whenever there is a connection, utilization. When one thing is made up of another, composition. And one thing is an instance of another created based on another, that's instantiation. And that design look at this now. If you do not identify the relationship correctly, what will happen? You will write two different classes, or you may write create inheritance. And here there was inheritance which was required. If you do not understand, identify the relationship, so we will not introduce relationship. That is, you will go on to define two different classes, and you end up repeating the same thing again in both the classes. In InkPen, what you will write, you will end up writing the same description in ballpen also. A repetition of code will occur. Had you identified this relationship, then first you will design the superclass, that is pen, then inherit. So your partially designed class you have, then you inherit and create a new class called as ink pen from an existing class pen. You'll create a new class called as ball pen that from an existing class called as pen. So you'll save the time that you otherwise have wasted in writing the same code again and again. Correct? Plus changes made at one place will be reflected all the places. So if you identify the relationship, your design is going to be perfect. If you fail to identify the relationship, design is going to go wrong. How about this?
So can I contradict for the last one?
Yes,
I'm getting a
always.
bit confused.
Always. Tell me.
S- so, so in case of utilization,
Hmm.
when we consider the term using each other, leaving
Correct.
that part, it was existence of two different classes, right?
Correct.
But in inheritance, as Nikhilesh also answered,
Hmm.
he also used the term class pen and then ink pen and ball pen.
Hmm.
But you said we can't consider that pen here
No, he was
because you
talking
were
about
asking.
he was saying ball pen is an object of class pen.
Okay, so they're
Ball pen these are not
kind of
objects.
pen,
These
yeah,
are types. These are
kind of pen.
classes. These are not
Yes,
objects.
okay, sir.
Both of them are inheriting from the same class called as pen. So pen is also a class, ink pen is also a class, and ball pen is also a class. So even if I don't take pen into consideration, both of them still share certain things.
So then, when it comes to sharing, we'll write inheritance kind of relationship. But in the case of uh, uh, here, as you said, sir, utilization and association is same, right?
Yeah, and there is no sharing between them.
Yeah, and there is no sharing. Okay, but okay, sir, I got it.
So there is
But then there
connection,
is, yeah, okay,
no
yes,
sharing.
sir, yes, sir,
In inheritance there is always sharing. There's something that they share. How they will share, that's a different issue, but there is some kind of sharing. So whenever there is sharing,
yes,
it
sir.
will always be inheritance.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Come on, next. Come on, others, quickly answer. अटेम्प्ट करो यार, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. आंसर अगर आपको पता ही तो आप आते ही नहीं यहाँ. कितनी बार कहूँ मैं आपसे? Wrong answer, right answer. Important is answer. Okay, whether you get it right or wrong, that's a secondary thing. Don't ask me to call out your name. संकल्प आंसर करो, शिशिर आंसर करो, ऐसा ना हो. खुद होके आंसर करो. Come on.
So class object and
अरे नहीं
composition.
यार, बाकी लोग कहाँ हैं?
Sorry, sir.
Yes, others. Yes, come on. Smita says it's class object relationship. So Smita, type कौन सा है? Class object है तो एक category हो गया. Type कौन सा है? So she says class object relationship and that's composition. Okay. रोहन आप क्या समझा कह रहे थे?
Sir,
Smita says her mic is not working. She says it's class object composition. Anybody has a different opinion? I think she's wrong. पहला आंसर दिया और गलत दिया है. She says it's class object composition.
Same, sir.
Same? कैसे?
Computer can't exist without processor.
Description of computer is incomplete without processor. So here, what is whole and what is part?
Whole is computer and
Huh?
a part is processor.
And processor is an object of which class?
Processor.
A processor is an object of class processor. So what Smitha has also answered is perfect answer. Description of computer is incomplete without description of processor. You cannot describe a computer and there is no process inside it. That cannot be called as a computer. There is process. Computer has a processor. Processor is a part of computer. So whenever this part of has it's always composition. We just have to figure it out how we'll describe it. So computer has a processor. Processor is a part of computer. It's class object relationship, and that's composition. So that answer was perfect. It's composition. How about this? Come on, करो आंसर जल्दी. अमन आप बताइए अभी. चलो, आई विल कॉल आउट द नेम्स ना. आप खुद होके आंसर नहीं कर रहे. अमन आप बताइए. आंसर सही दो, गलत दो, बता दो. हाँ
सर, क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट एंड कंपोजिशन.
कैसे बताइए?
सर, IPL team is a class.
Correct.
And Rising Pune Supergiant is a object of that class.
Okay, perfect. हाँ.
And
तो ये कैटेगरी हो गया. क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट टाइप कौन सा है?
composition.
कैसे? कैसे?
Rising Pune Supergiant will not exist without IPL team. Means if IPL team is destroyed.
एक मिनट एक आप कह रहे पहले आईपीएल टीम क्लास है और राइजिंग पुणे जायंट ऑब्जेक्ट है कह रहे.
Yes sir.
And then you are explaining me object will not exist without a class.
Means अगर IPL team ये हुआ destroy हुआ, if IPL team is not there, so there will be no Rising Pune Supergiant.
इसलिए composition.
Yes sir.
Composition में part of चाहिए, has a चाहिए. यहाँ part of और has a relationship है क्या?
Rising Pune Supergiant is a part of IPL team.
Rising Supergiant is a part of IPL team. Okay, so that's Aman's explanation. Anybody agrees to Aman's explanation?
No sir.
क्यों नहीं?
No, sir.
सर IPL टीम है और राइजिंग पुणे सुपर जायंट is an instance of an IPL team, so it's an instantiation.
It's an instantiation. कैसे?
सर राइजिंग पुणे सुपर जायंट इंस्टेंस है टीम का, a kind of IPL team.
A kind of रहेगा तो?
Kind of नहीं, sorry, specific. It's like class and its own object.
It is a IPL team. Kind of nahi. It is an IPL team. It is an IPL team. It is not a kind of IPL team. It's an IPL team.
IPL team.
Okay. Rising Supergiant. So a class object relationship है. IPL team is a class. Hyderabad क्या है? What is that?
Rising Pune Super Giants is a team.
है ना? Hyderabad क्या है? What is that?
Sunrising Hyderabad.
हाँ. या फिर दूसरा कौन सा है? दिल्ली.
Chennai Super King.
चेन्नई सुपर किंग. सपोज चेन्नई सुपर किंग, ये हैदराबाद टीम, ये बैंगलोर टीम, रॉयल बैंगलोर टीम, whatever team names are there. So these are all objects of IPL team. Rising Pune Giant was an object that is destroyed maybe, but that's an object. That's an object of class IPL team. Say all these teams that we have, all these objects that we have, maybe Chennai Super Kings, whatever it is. So its structure and Rising Pune Giant structure is exactly same because both of them have been created from based on the same design. So IPL team is a class, very correct. Rising Pune Super Giant is an object, very correct. This Rising Pune Super Giant is an object of which class? IPL team, because it is an IPL team. It is an IPL team. So it is a class object relationship and instantiation. Rising Pune Super Giant is an IPL team. It's an instance of class IPL team. And all these instances that we can have multiple instances of a class unless we are not using singleton. हमने कहाँ देखा था singleton? Oh sorry, Java में देखा. Sorry, यहाँ भी देखेंगे, but वो Java में देखा था. So there can be multiple instances of this particular class that is there. So Rising Pune Super Giant जैसे एक object है, Delhi Champions एक object है, Hyderabad Super Giant और एक दूसरा object है. These are all objects of class IPL team. It's a class object relationship. It's instantiation. All of them have same structure. ऐसा है क्या? बैंगलोर की टीम में 20 प्लेयर है और पुणे की टीम में 21 प्लेयर है और दिल्ली की टीम में 11 प्लेयर है, ऐसा है क्या? All of them have same structure, all of them have captain, all of them have wicket keeper, all of them have manager, all of them have sponsor, all of them have the owner company, everything is same. They're just different instances of the same class called as IPL team. They're different instances of the same class called as IPL team. Aman, समझ में आया?
Yes, sir.
How about this now? Yes, anybody?
So in this case, what is the
Yes.
context? Like speakers inside the television, or both are separate?
Either you may think about. I don't have any more explanation. These are two things in front of you. You decide.
Yes.
Class.
क्लास एक्सप्लेन करो कैसे?
Television.
क्लास है और कैटेगरी कौन सा है, टाइप कौन सा है? यश?
Yeah, sir, let me think again.
Sir, class composition.
अरे एक याद रखो, कॉम्पोजिशन कैन नेवर बी क्लास. Composition always class object, याद रखो. Inherit is always class. Instantiation is always class object. So composition and instantiation are always class object. Inheritance and utilization are class. ये याद रखो पहले और फिर आंसर करो. एंड क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट रिलेशनशिप इसका मतलब नहीं कि देयर विल नॉट बी अ क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट है तो हाउस एंड डोर, हाउस इज ऑल्सो क्लास, डोर इज ऑल्सो क्लास, बट ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ क्लास डोर इज प्रेजेंट इन साइड हाउस, सो इट्स क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट. डॉक्टर एंड पेशेंट क्लास है, बट दोनों जगह क्लासेस है, बट दे आर नॉट प्रेजेंट इन साइड ईच अदर, दे कैन एग्जिस्ट इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ ईच अदर, but both of them are making use of each other. Inheritance में there is some kind of sharing, utilization में there is some kind of connection. Composition अगर है and aggregation अगर है तो one thing is a part of another. Whether the part exists inside or outside, वो aggregation या composition का difference रहेगा. But for us हमारे लिए वो composition है suppose. Come on,
Sir,
explain this now.
in this case, it is both, because we don't know the context.
तो
If it
बताइए
is,
ना. हाँ
sir, if it is an built-in speaker,
हाँ
it is a class object,
हाँ
and it is composition.
हाँ
Uh, Inside a television, if you have a built-in speaker,
हाँ
so it is a part of a
हाँ
television.
हाँ
And wherein the case of class,
हाँ.
it is utilization.
कैसे?
An external connection will be there.
हाँ.
Television is using speakers.
ओके. एंड डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ टेलीविजन इज कंप्लीट विदाउट स्पीकर, ऐसा कोई टेलीविजन रहेगा विदाउट स्पीकर?
No. So no. So it's composition. Yes, sir.
Can
Sorry.
you ever describe a television without speaker? You can add additional speaker, but will there be a description of, you are describing a type called as television and you will not mention anything about, you will mention the screen size, everything, and you will not mention a speaker? Or I ship you a television without a speaker. Have you ever seen a television without a speaker?
No, sir. So yeah.
तो कौन सा रहेगा?
So utilization then.
यूटिलाइजेशन कैसे?
Sir, television can exist without speakers.
Yes.
So but sir, television will always have a speaker. So
Has a,
always has a speaker.
तो ये कौन सा हो गया? यूटिलाइजेशन हो गया क्या?
Composition. Sorry.
Okay. So description of television incomplete without description of speaker. You cannot have a television without speaker. Speaker can exist independent. Like engine जो आपका कार का था, car and engine. Your design of car is incomplete without engine. अरे engine can exist without car also. I can use the same engine inside a car, और car नहीं चाहिए तो car में से I can get that engine and put it onto my well to fetch some water from the well. कर सकता हूँ ना, इंजन का इस्तेमाल मैं और कामों के लिए कर सकता हूँ. Likewise, this speaker that is there connected to television, I can pull it off, tear it apart, and use it for some other purpose. That's okay. But I cannot have a television without a speaker. Television always has some speaker which is there. Okay. So television has a speaker. Now, whether it is present inside or whether it is connected outside, whether it's association or aggregation, whether it is aggregation or composition, that's a different thing. Okay, but then you will never have a television description. You will never purchase a TV without a television. When a television is working, for it to be called as a television, there has to be a speaker which is there. Without speaker, you will never describe a television. So it's class object relationship and its composition. So class is television, object is speaker, but speaker is an object of class speaker which is present inside a television. Television has a speaker. Speaker is a part of television. Whether it is inside or whether it is externally connected, that doesn't matter. But television has a speaker. Aggregation और composition में क्या था difference? Whether the part is inside or whether the part is outside, whether the ownership construction destruction of the part is responsibility of the whole or not the responsibility of the whole. That was the only difference between aggregation and composition. How about this?
Class and inheritance.
Explain karo kaise.
They both are inherited from a superclass book.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sir, here it is
Yes, sir.
instantiation, class object and instantiation.
Kaise?
Sir, textbook is a class,
Huh?
and letter C++ is a instance of textbook. It is
Correct.
yeah, and it is a book, specific book.
It is
Letter
a
C++.
specific. Okay.
Hence, it is instantiation.
It's an instantiation. So all textbooks have same structure, na?
Almost.
Almost. Yeah, all objects have same structure and same behavior. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
तो यह है क्या?
No, then
तो
no.
if I have an object of some class, all objects of the class will should have same structure and same behavior.
Yes, sir. Then it's inheritance. Yeah.
Kaise?
So now it will have a superclass book, and
Huh?
it will share some common properties.
Who will share common properties?
Textbook and a kind of book, let us C++. It may be some other kind of book rather than textbook.
So latest C++ is not a textbook,
So it is,
or it is a book. It is not a textbook.
sir.
No, simple question: is latest C++ a textbook? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
It is a textbook.
Yes.
Latest C++ is a kind of textbook. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Latest C++ has all the properties of a textbook. Textbook has an author. Latest C++ is an author. Textbook has a price. Latest C++ has a price. It has an edition. It has an edition. It has the number of pages, publisher, everything it has. But latest C++ is just a type. Your latest C++, my copy of latest C++, these are objects. But when I say latest C++, it's just a type. It's just a type name. And all the copies of latest C++ that we all have, they are objects of that particular type. Latest C++ is inheriting all the properties of textbook. It's not a writing book in which you're going to write something. It's not a notebook. It's a textbook. It is a textbook, but it's a kind of textbook. It's a kind of textbook. There can be several such kind of there are technical textbooks. There are novels. There are different types of textbooks. So latest C++ is a textbook. It's not a notebook. It's a textbook from where you're going to read. It's going to talk about a topic called, it has a title called as latest C++. All these books, every book instance will be a separate copy. Means when I say that your copy's serial number will be different, my copy serial number will be different. All of us have an instance of this particular class called as latest C++. All of us, we all owe have latest C++. Your maybe edition number 10, might be edition number 4, which I had purchased long time back. So edition number is different, but still the value of that attribute may be different, but it's still of the same type. That is latest C++. So latest C++ is a kind or a type of textbook. It exhibits all the properties of textbook: author, price, edition, date of printing, everything, number of pages. It has all the properties of any textbook that it has. So it's a class relationship and inheritance. Everyone understood this? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
कहीं कंफ्यूजन है तो कुछ बताइए. लुक एट दिस. अभी आगे जाके हम लोग जो इनहेरिटेंस में डिस्कस करेंगे, दैट इज ऑल अबाउट टेक्निकल इन टर्म्स ऑफ सिंटैक्स. You learn that syntax in C++, you learn the syntax in Java, you learn the syntax in Python. Many of you are attending all the 3 batches. तो syntax you learn, but वो syntax पढ़ के करना क्या वो नहीं मालूम रहेगा तो that's of no use ना. Because syntax is not the most important thing. Design is something which is very important. एक बार क्या करना है, if you know, then you can always look at the textbook and understand the syntax. No textbook is going to give you an idea. Solution कोई textbook देने वाला नहीं है. They will give you solution अगर आपके दिमाग में है, you know what to do. How to do it you will find. Okay, but what to do is something that you have to figure out. So this discussion that we are having is something very, very important. How about this? Come on, somebody quick. करण बताइए. करण है या गया? करण गया, कॉल कर. मनोज, come on, answer. Manoj. Rajat.
सर क्लास ऑब्जेक्ट कंपोज.
कैसे?
सर इलेक्ट्रिक फैन इज अ क्लास. मोटर सर उसका ऑब्जेक्ट है.
इलेक्ट्रिक फैन से ऑब्जेक्ट मोटर है.
यस सर.
सो एवरी मोटर इज इलेक्ट्रिक फैन.
सर a motor has to be a part of electric.
पार्ट ऑफ. तो मोटर कौन से क्लास का है? इलेक्ट्रिक फैन का ऑब्जेक्ट है मोटर?
नो सर, मोटर इज कंप्लीटली ऑफ अ डिफरेंट क्लास. दोनों भी क्लास और कंपोजिशन.
क्लास कंपोजिशन कभी क्लास होता ही नहीं है.
सर यूटिलाइजेशन.
कैसे?
सर both are using each other.
बोथ आर यूजिंग ईच अदर. ओके. और यूटिलाइजेशन में और क्या कॉन्सेप्ट है?
They must be independent.
They must be independent.
तो कैन यू डिस्क्राइब मोटर विदाउट नोइंग अबाउट इलेक्ट्रिक फैन? Yes or no?
Yes.
Can you describe electric fan without having knowledge about motor?
No.
Finished. So it cannot be utilization. So when there is dependency, when there is some kind of connection, then it was utilization. But when one thing cannot be described without other, it always has to be either aggregation or composition. So this is kind of composition. A motor is a part of electric fan. Your description of electric fan is incomplete without motor. Motor can be described without electric fan. That's okay. But electric fan cannot, the whole cannot be described without that part. The motor is a part of electric fan. Electric fan has a motor. So motor is a part of fan. Description of fan is incomplete without description of motor. And so fan has an instance of class motor. So there is a motor installed inside a fan. So while you describe a class fan, you will say motor, a motor, this motor, that motor, whatever motor it may be. So it's a class object relationship, that's for sure. It's composition, but motor is a part of electric fan. Electric fan has a motor. So it's composition. Keep in mind, composition always class object, utilization always class. So if there is a class object, it cannot be utilization. How about this? शिशिर आंसर करो. शिशिर, अभिषेक, यश.
Class
and
inheritance.
कैसे?
सर सुपर क्लास सर बॉन्ड.
शेयरिंग मीन्स आपको ये याद रखना है, शेयरिंग है. क्या शेयर कर रहे हैं?
Feathers, wings.
Structure and behavior both.
Yes, sir.
Bone ka type hollow bones, behavior flying. They are sharing both structure as well as behavior. So that is the correct answer. Both of them are kind of bird. They share common structure and common behavior. It's class relationship, and that is inheritance. Okay. So with that, with those examples that we have taken for today, we'll stop with the discussion. And tomorrow when we meet, we'll start with our topic, which is a part of a syllabus. That's concept of inheritance. So although we have the topic for our discussion inheritance, but I personally feel it is important for us to understand all the kind of relationships. And we are going to focus more on inheritance because object-oriented languages are the only place where we have an opportunity to express this relationship. Composition, if you talk about, utilization, we to talk about, this can be expressed in all other languages. Even in C, I can have composition, structure within a structure. I can do that. But inheritance is a specialty of object-oriented languages. So tomorrow when we meet, we'll talk in more detail about inheritance, and we'll start with our topic. And this was just a warm-up session today. We are meeting after a break. So a bit of warm-up before we actually go ahead with our regular topic. So tomorrow when we meet, we start our topic, that is inheritance. I hope you have understood this particular topic and its significance. नहीं समझ में आया तो question पूछेगा, so that I can clarify, I can explain in a different way. So this was just to build up and help you understand why do you need to understand the relationship. अगर नहीं समझ में आए तो कोड क्या किस बात का लिखोगे, डिजाइन किस बात का करोगे. सिंटैक्स लर्निंग इज ऑफ, भूल भी जा सकते हैं सिंटैक्स. आइडियाज कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर चाहिए, हमारे क्या करना है मालूम होना चाहिए. And then you can learn whichever language you are looking at. It just remains like I quickly learn languages and I am proud about it. But ये क्यों कर सकता हूँ, क्या करना है मालूम है. अब बात बचती है only to learn the syntax, and learning syntax is very easy for anybody. तो once you understand what is to learn, अगर आपका डिजाइन परफेक्ट है So learning syntax of other languages is not no big deal. So focus on concepts. Don't worry about the syntax. There are tools, documentation, everything available for you to help with the syntax. Ideas ke liye, you are the responsible person. Implementation ke liye, there are a number of things which are there. So don't bother about the implementation. Worry about idea. So with that, we stop for today. कोई क्वेश्चन है तो पूछिएगा, otherwise we are done for the day. Okay, thank you all for attending the session. I hope you had enjoyed Diwali. कल day after tomorrow we'll have a regular session and we'll continue with the discussion. That's all for today. Thank you all. Take care. Good night. Love you all. Bye bye.